Henry, who lived in Queens Village, Long Island, is the father of Howard. I think this must have been taken up at camp. It looks like the old bridge at camp. They used to go up there and spend weekends, and Dad loved that place. Henry worked for Singer Sewing Machine in New York. This is, let's see, Howard is on the left standing up, and the fellow in the light suit is Freddie Whitten, who is a neighbor of his. Frankie Heenison, my other cousin, is sitting in front of Howard, and I am in front of Freddie Whitten. This was down in Queens Village. We used to get down there quite often and visit Howard and Frank. And this is John Andrew Lifite himself in his rompers. I don't have any idea where the picture was taken, but I love that haircut. That's kind of neat. How old? 5, 6 years old. That's my father, my mother on his left, and Aunt May Lifite, who is Henry's wife, Howard's mother, on his right. Aunt May was a Riley out of Brooklyn, New York. My mother and my favorite aunt, Aunt Liz. She was John Frick's daughter, the eldest. And she lived with us. She was a maiden aunt, and she lived with us in 312 Water Street after my grandfather and grandmother died, and survived my mother by quite a few years. I don't know whether this was taken, but it was a swimming probably down the beach. That's me with my arm around my cousin Frank. Howard is next to him in the dark bathing suit, and Kenneth, who was Frank's younger brother, is in front. My mother in the background between Kenneth and or Frank and Howard. And we were up at Yankee Lake when this picture was taken. Yankee Lake was a big farm right on Yankee Lake, which had a bunch of cottages. My father would rent a cottage for a couple of weeks during the summer, and I'm the one that's with the white collar on. I don't know who the other kids are, but we used to get in this wagon and talk somebody into pulling us around the farmyard. My graduation from junior high school. Father wouldn't let me wear long pants, and I was kind of annoyed at that, but my father won. But I did get a blue jacket and a tie, and I'm standing there with a friend of mine named Mickey McGrath, who lived in our neighborhood. And this was graduation from 8th grade, ready to go into high school. That's a much younger picture of me holding a fishing pole. This was taken up at Ashokan Dam. Dad would take us up there, and we had a tent that we pitched on a platform and slept in it or cooked in it and spent a couple of weeks during the summer up there. Dad was a great one for taking us places where there was fish. This is a picture of Yankee Lake. I'm sitting in the boat, and I don't know who's next to me, probably one of my older sisters. Yankee Lake was a developed lake. You can see all the stumps in the back where the forest was that they filled in after they put in a dam. And as I remember, it was a great place for fishing. We used to go out on that big stump out there and fish for bluegills and sunnies and perch. It was kind of fun. This is the big building at Yankee Lake that was owned by a man by the name of Mr. Graham. And the left-hand end of that building, the small part there, was a little country store, and big deal was to get a nickel and get down there and buy a Hershey bar. It was a great place to go when we were kids. Whole family would go up. One of my father's cars was my brother Fred and my sister Helen. He always had these touring cars. They were quite nifty, but I never knew him to put the top down. Actually, I guess it was a convertible if you wanted to think of it in that way, but we never drove with the top down. That was a no-no. Had a cloth top, though. This is my dad. He went fishing down off Sheepshead Bay, I guess, with Higginson, and caught this monstrous cod. and they took a picture of him like the Gorton man with the cod on his back, and I can remember that we ate cod for weeks and weeks after he caught this stupid thing. My father and my mother down in Queens Village at the Schramm's house. This is after I married Alma, and they were down for a visit. This is up at Camp St. George, the choir camp from St. George's Church in Newburgh. And the little boy in front of me is Gordon Bink, who is my oldest sister Margaret's son. Standing next to me is my Aunt Liz, and in front of her is a little boy that was at the camp. This picture is of me in my tuxedo when I used to usher at the Three Arts concerts at the Newburgh High School when I was in college. We used to get free tickets to it, and it was a lot of fun because they had some great artists that came and did concerts and shows for the people in Newburgh. And here I graduated into the Army. This was probably taken down in Gulfport, Mississippi, where I spent quite a bit of time in a mechanics school down there. This is another Army picture
of me in my uniform.
Shaved the mustache off in this one.
I got rid of the mustache.
This was early in my training. I can't remember where this picture was taken. I'm over in Rome now. This was when we were in Italy with the 459th Bomber Squadron, B-24s, and that's Joe Brady, who was Bill McIntyre's half-brother. Joe was a sergeant in the MPs over there, and I went over and visited him. And this is me sitting on top of an engine of a B-24, supposedly working on the thing. Actually, they did this for a publicity shot. The boys in the publicity department came along and wanted some guy to sit on top of an airplane and have a picture taken. You can see a B-24 in the background. This is camp in the early days. That was in Sampsonville, New York, up in the Catskill Mountains. And we spent a lot of time up there, a lot of weekends. Belonged to B.M. Higginson, who was a contractor in Newburgh, and he loaned Dad the use of the camp, and Dad was sort of a caretaker. This is in the fall, hunting season, deer hunting. I'm standing leaning against the post. My brother Herman is on the far right, and between him, or I don't know who was between him, but the man on my right was Clint Piper, who was a good friend of my father's. And Clint Piper and Dad went up to camp quite a bit. These are just 3 shots of me. The one in the middle was one of these quarter in the slot deals that you get in New York City or in carnivals and things like that. The one on the left, I guess, was a school photograph, and of course the one on the right was a graduation photograph when I was in college. This is a picture that was taken by the school photographer, Crampon School. They come around once a year and take pictures of all the kids, and of course they took the teachers and the principal and the secretaries and everybody else. And this was the photo that I had done then, probably around 1963 or 4. Pop and Mom Schramm, probably with Alma. Don't know where, but she was a very young child then. They lived down in Queens Village. Matter of fact, that's how I met Alma, because she was the maid of honor at Howard and Dorothy's wedding, and I was the best man. This is Alma, and I think that was a friend of hers down in Queens Village, but Alma's the taller of the 2. Alma was the oldest of 3 sisters. There was Alma, then Dorothy, and then Bessie. This is another picture of Alma, dressed up in a cardigan, a spit curl. This was the age of the flapper, I guess. Another picture of Alma with a fur coat on, no less. I don't know where this was taken. I don't recognize the house at all. It may have been some friend's house, or it may have been a resort that she and her friends went to. She worked for Metropolitan Life for a long while and had quite a few girlfriends there who were in the same department she was in. And they would go away for weekends, which was kind of nice. This is Alma holding Uncle Henry's little dog in the back of their house. They lived in Queens Village too. This was the Schramm house down in Long Island. One of the nice little development houses with a driveway and a garage in the back and a big cellar that Grandpa could work in. Very, very comfortable house. This is Grandpa and Grandma Schramm, Henry and Bessie. Henry was German, of course, spoke some German, although he never did very much of it. And Bessie's last name was Hunt, and she came from the Peekskill Hunts. Let's see, left to right in the front is Dorothy, Alma, Grandma Schramm, and Bessie. In the back is John and Howard and Pop Schramm and Arthur. Arthur Ring married Bessie, Howard Leifheit married Dorothy, and John Leifheit married Alma. And these are the firstborn. That's Alma with Johnny and Chris, and Dorothy with Stephen, and Bessie with Susan. Bessie's last name was Ring. And of course, Howard and Dorothy, their name was Leifheit, and so was Alma and John. And standing in the back is my father and Pop Schramm and Uncle Henry Leifheit, and in the front we have Arthur Ring and Howard Leifheit and my brother Herman Leifheit. Herman was the middle brother. Fred was the oldest, then Herman, then me. My mother and father had 6 children. There was Margaret and Fred and Dorothy and Herman and Helen and John. Now we have Aunt Dorothy Searle, who is Grandma Schramm's sister, my father, Bessie, Uncle Henry holding Stephen, Ma Schramm, Pop Schramm, Herman, Dorothy, and in the front Arthur and Howard holding 2 of the kids, Susan and probably Steve. Well, we're sitting in Uncle Henry's house down in Queens Village. Dorothy and Howard were living with Uncle Henry after Aunt May died. And I guess we're playing with the trains that Howard had, but that's Henry and Dorothy and Alma and John. And the dog in Uncle Henry's lap. Can't remember that dog's name. Here's Dorothy with Stephen and Mary Beth. This is the house on Route 22 in Bedford, New York, when I was teaching in Bedford. We rented this from Win and Walt Cosgrove, and it was way, way up on a hill with a long pair of stone steps that went up to it. And Johnny was born while we were living in this house. Johnny was actually born in Mineola, New York, because I was at Camp Orange working in the YMCA camp there when she was down in Long Island. This house was on High Street in Katona. And after we left the house on Bedford Road, Route 22, we moved to Katona and rented this house for 2 years from a captain who was over in Germany in the Army, and lived here for a couple of years. That's Mama and Pop Schramm with Johnny and